Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. I am your host, Scotty Roberts. And I think we are all set to fly already. So I don't have a lot of setup to do. That's what happens when I'm organized ahead of time. So for those of you joining us new, this is the pre-show, meaning it's not the real show yet. The show starts at 3 minutes after the top of the hour, which comes in about 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes and 14 seconds. And then we're off to a real roll. And tonight we're going to talk about Israel a little bit, as if you haven't heard enough. Here's the sign of the times, the way things work nowadays. You hear about something for a few days, and it's like, oh, that's old. Can we move on to something else now? That's what our news cycles have trained us to do. And our internet economy, our internet mode of living. So anyhow, and we'll have some discussion afterwards in the captain's cabin. And we'll see how that goes. We got 1.5 minutes, and we start this show in earnest. So we'll talk a little bit at the beginning about something completely different, about spirit voices and spirit boxes. I told you a little bit about that on Sunday after our experience on Saturday night out at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival grounds. And so we'll talk about that a little bit for those who might not have been here on Sunday. And I've got a little clip that you can watch as well. So if you're here, welcome. And certainly if you're sitting out there, I see a lot more people are out there than are showing up in the chat room. Come on in, say hello, and we'll have a good evening. And remember, during the show itself, the 1 hour, we cannot take calls. Just our system is not allowing that still. And it's really frustrating that we can't figure out why. So it's something to do with the stream. Hey, Daniel Ondra. It is 2 minutes and 37, 38, 39, 40 seconds after the top of the hour. So in about 15 seconds, we go live over on the radio station. So I'm going to go dark. Sit tight. Don't go away.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey everyone, welcome to the broadcast. Glad to have you here on the show. I am your host, Scotty Roberts, and this is my show, the Intrepid radio program, broadcasting over on Subspace Odyssey Radio. And you can get there and hear the audio version of this show alone. It's a radio station over at odysseyradio.com. That's ODYSY radio.com. You can also see all the other shows that play over there, and you can catch this show in archive over there. And if you are listening over there, you can stop over to the YouTube page, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can turn on this show just for one purpose alone, to see the chat room and participate in it if you'd like to do that. And so come on over and join the other fellow Intrepids and join the chat. And I want to say welcome to those of you who are here now. Daniel Ondra, Viking Off-Roading, that's Michael, and Matthew Sainsbury. Sorry, Michael, I gave away your secret identity. Pearson Castile is here. And I think I said Matthew Sainsbury. And out of all of you that are already gathering, those are the only ones over in the chat room right now. So come on over and join the chat, join the conversation. And I don't always like wearing my glasses because if you look at my screen, it reflects my screen. I don't like that, but I need them sometimes to read the chat. But I do want to start out tonight by talking just a couple of minutes about something that we talked about on Sunday, yesterday, on the It's Sunday show. Saturday night, we went and did the investigation, the ghost hunt, over at an event called the Phantom's Feast, which is put on by Jim Cunningham, the man who does the Feast of Fantasy at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival. And it's on the Renaissance Festival grounds, so it's in the old buildings that have been there for 50 years. That doesn't sound real old, but the buildings were meant to look old, look like medieval to Renaissance era. And there's 23 acres of them, and it's all built on a stone quarry with an oak grove throughout the whole place. And at the same time, it sits, as some would say, on the confluence of ley lines that cross right on the site. And so there's a lot of energy to the site. There always has been. And with all the people that visit there and have been part of the festival over the years, there's a lot of, I think, human energy trapped in there, not trapped in a negative sense, locked into the place. There is a lot of spirit energy there. Been a lot of people that we know out there that have passed out there, and so it was it's quite an interesting place. And there are those who, even now, I'm still hearing things as a result of talking about what happened with us on Saturday. There are people that are talking about the darkness that is out there. Hey, Paranormal Reality TV, that's got to be none other than J.V. Johnson. Have a good show, he says. We need to get you back out in the field. Absolutely, sir. We do. We'll talk about that. That's J.V. Jimmy Johnson. He is the former publisher of TAPS Paramag when I worked there as the editor-in-chief. And so he's got Paranormal Reality TV. I've joined them for one investigation and more coming up. Look forward to talking with you, Jimmy. And so this event that took place Saturday night, we were out there. Jim Cunningham does a show. It's kind of set up like a Victorian parlor show, spiritist show. And he has guests come out there, ranging from Rocky and I, Rainey and Rocky and me, to some psychic friends that he has that come out, other paranormal investigation groups. Dave Schrader, he's had out there. He's going to have him again this year. And he runs weekends in October up till Halloween. And they have these shows Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. And we just did the opening weekend, Friday and Saturday. We went out and we did paranormal investigating. We went out and saw some of the stages out there. We go to the stage sites. And you can go to my page. You can see some of my posts on it and see some of the stages we visited out there. Remember, it's a theater. It's a big theater, open air theater. And all these different stages where all the different acts performed. And we were out there. And as many of you know, my good friend, my dear friend, Dave Potter, passed away a little over 3 months ago. And it was a surprise and a shock to us all. He was a dear friend of my family. All of my kids, I have 6 kids, ranging in age from my twins who are 31. My son's 22. My second son is 14. My 2 daughters, 11 and 8. They all have grown up knowing Dave as Uncle Dave. And that's why we called him Uncle Dave here on the show. He would come into the show, especially in the captain's cabin, and we'd sit and converse about all different kinds of things. And so when Uncle Dave passed, it was a big shock to us all. And we had a rough time with that. So when I went out this year to the festival, which is where Dave and I pretty much met through our festival connections, we were both out there doing entertainment. That was a place he loved. And I thought if he might be anywhere that I could contact him, maybe it would be out there. And it still seemed new and fresh, and I hadn't tried to contact him in any way prior to this. And so Saturday night, we did the show. We took people around to some of the stages. And then when we were all done and we dismissed the audience and they went home, Rainey and my son Sam and Flynn, both of them, were with us. Flynn's first paranormal investigation. And we went up on the knoll where there used to be a spirit there that those say that was like the guardian of the festival. The guardian, more than that, it's old, very ancient, ingrained in the land. The Native Americans had a story about this guardian. And so we went up to the knoll to see if we could contact the guardian, which we had done before, at least by what we picked up on our equipment. And this leaves the big question about equipment. I have another dear friend of mine from the festival. We're talking about it in one of my posts over the last day here. You can see it on Facebook. And he was talking, he tends to think when you die, that's the end. There's nothing more. And he says, I don't doubt. He says, I heard the voice in your recording. He says, I don't doubt that you picked up a voice. What I doubt is the technology. Is it programmed to do that? Is it that we get hyped up in the psychology of it all? And so on. So we've had this little dialogue going back and forth. And so I've got the clip loaded up. If you haven't had the opportunity to see it, it's a much longer clip that Rainey recorded, but there was only one little spot where we're up on top of the knoll in the dark. And it's called the knoll because it's a hill up behind one of the stages full of trees. And it's the highest spot on the property. And so if you were here on Sunday morning, we talked about this a little bit. So it might be a recap for some of you. I'm not sure if we showed the video on Sunday. But Rainey took a longer video, about 12 minutes. And I've got a little clip that's about 15 seconds long that I cut out. And this is where all through the evening at different stages when we were doing the investigation, we said, if my friend Dave is out there, let us know you're here and talk to us. We'd love to hear your voice. And nothing all evening. And so we got up to the knoll. The audience was all gone home. And just the handful of us are up there. And at one final point, I said, Dave, if you want to talk to us, you can. And I paused for a while. And then I said, that's where the tape picks up. And then I said, Dave, I said, I love you, brother. And immediately we got a response. And I looked up at Rainey, I said, did you hear that? And she heard it. She actually said it before I did. We had a voice come back. Let's see if you can hear this. If you haven't heard it already, you have to listen very close. After I said, Dave, I love you, brother, you can hear it. So I am going to play this little video clip for you tonight, and you can see what you think of this. And let me find it here, right here. Here we go. I'm going to play this. Now see what you think of this. Here we go. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep.
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. There it was. I'm going to play it one more time for you. Listen very closely. See if you know what he says. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep.
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. All right. Folks, did you hear that? Well, of course, I went ahead and I said what the voice was saying as it came through. But I said, I love you, brother. And immediately a voice said, I miss you too. And I looked up at Rainey and she said, I miss you too. I just heard that. And I said, I heard that. And it does sound like Dave, Matthew. It does sound exactly like him. And of course, my friend who's skeptical of this stuff, and not because he's being mean or cruel, I respect his point of view deeply, and him deeply as a person. But he said, are you sure though? You know, he says, I heard it. He says, but what are you really hearing? What's the tech? And I happen to believe it was Dave. And I don't think, in my mind, there's no question. Now, the only way I would question it is if I question the technology. If I come in believing that maybe there's nothing on the other side, and the only reason we don't hear people talk to us is because there's no one there to talk to us. And as my friend said, he said, I would think that would be the worst kind of hell to know that you're out there and you have no way to communicate with your loved ones. And I countered with, well, I don't think necessarily that they're out there pining away to talk to us. And that when we finally get this device and flip the switch, they go, oh my God, I can't believe you finally found a way to hear me. I don't think that's what they do. As I said to my friend, I said, I think they speak to us in all sorts of ways. They make contact with us and they've got other things to do. I don't know what those things are. I've never been there. I don't know where they go, what they do. They don't sit, I know they don't sit on a cloud strumming a harp waiting to see us again. I think the afterlife is just as busy, if not more so, than this life. So, yeah, Matthew, it's not like a phone call. And and I wasn't chiding my friend at all or debasing anything he had to say. I said, I respect you, but maybe consider that there's this angle. So I'm going to play this for you one more time if you didn't get a chance to hear it. And you can take it and decipher it as you wish. But this is, again, Dave, I believe Dave's voice coming in and talking to me right after I tell him, Dave, I love you, brother. Then he responded immediately. Here it is one more time. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. And again. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. All right. And my good friend said, and he's trying to figure it out for himself in his own mind. You know, I think he heard the voice and he doesn't know what to make of it. So his mind goes to, I have to define this in a scientific way. And he said, maybe you're just primed to hear something, meaning we're psychologically juiced up, wanting to hear something. So we, in a sense, create the tulpa, if you will, because we're primed and ready. And that the device has things programmed into it that will make us think we just heard what we heard. And I, of course, don't believe that. My experiences with voices coming through are not many, but several, and over the years, and I've heard more than once. And I've heard EVPs, I've heard voices, but I have had voices speak to me before. I told my friend of my aunt, if you remember, my daughter, she was 16, she's now 31, so this is half her life ago. We were sitting in the living room of the ranch house where we lived. It was dark. It was late at night. We're out in the middle of nowhere in the country. And I have this box open and I had a voice come through. And it wasn't a voice I was expecting. It wasn't something I was juiced up to hear. And I was so primed and ready that I heard what I wanted to hear. I had a voice that said, "This is Andy." And I looked at my daughter. I said, "What did she say? What did that voice say?" And she said, "This is Andy." And the voice said, "This is Andy" again. Andy was my aunt who had passed away when my daughter was 3 and she's now 16. And she died rather young, might I add. She was 11 years older than me, which would mean she'd only be 73 today. And she died in 95, almost 30 years ago. So she was in her early to mid 40s when she passed, rather suddenly. But I had a conversation with her, with my daughter there. And that voice, whether it was my aunt or not, whether I was creating it or not, which I don't believe I was, that voice asked me questions, used a pet name or a nickname for my mom, her sister, by asking. The voice said, "Where's Janie?" That's my mom. her sister. Janie was what my aunt called her. Her name's Jane. She called her Janie. And so the voice knew that. The voice said it. The voice asked. I said, well, she's not here. She's living in Arizona now. And the voice said, oh, that's right. Then she told my daughter how pretty she thought she had grown since she was 3 and now 16. And so we had quite a little mini conversation there, phrases and words and things like that. Then it trailed off, and I eventually said in that setting, I said, well, and some of you have heard this story before, but I said, well, because I didn't hear any more talking, I said, well, I think I'm going to go then. I hope to talk to you again. Good night. And the voice said, good night. Just like that. Almost that tone. Good night. So there it was. And so when you have experiences like this, am I creating that? Do I need to hear something so badly? I'll use that term. I'll just say, do I need to hear something so badly that I'll create it, that I'm primed for it? Or is the voice there and I'm just reacting to it? I believe the latter, that the voice is there. And I believe in this clip I played for you that was Uncle Dave. That was Saturday night out at the festival grounds. And, another thing I told my friend who was asking questions about it, I said, if it's random, I said, it's very interesting how immediately after I said, I love you, brother, the voice came back and said, I miss you too. As if on cue, as if in a conversation. I said, for it being random, that's pretty spot on response, timing wise. So there it is. That's it. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because I have the clip, which I did not have yesterday, and makes the veil of life and afterlife feel thin, doesn't it, Pearson? Sure does. So I don't at all ridicule my friend who is an intelligent man. He's an intelligent thinker. He's a writer, very profoundly successful in his career. He's a critical thinker. And so I in no way want to diminish from his arguments, but I do want to offer up good counters to his arguments and say, well, consider this. And so that's where that's going. So thank you, Matthew. I think it is fascinating. It's very fascinating stuff. So let's move on to Israel. I want to talk about Israel. As I was growing up in the church, going to church school, and then from school onto church Bible college, from Bible college to theological seminary, from theological seminary into ministry. I had always believed that Israel was our ally, that we needed to maintain our alliance with Israel, and that to do so was a biblically right position to take. That's what I believed in my younger days. Now, if you took away the whole element of God, the whole element of Scripture, the whole element of a chosen people, if you took all of that, pushed it aside, said, let's say that doesn't exist, how would I view Israel? Would they be our ally? Did our alliance with Israel start because there were people who had that belief about Israel being God's chosen people? And I've asked myself that question before. I don't know where I'd be with Israel other than to say, I have studied enough history of Israel. I have studied the Holocaust. I don't know everything there is to know. I'm certainly no Holocaust scholar, but I have done research into the Holocaust over the years. And I know the ins and outs of speaking the history of the Holocaust. I, of course, had a Jewish family, as many of you know, and I only explain this because I'm not Jewish and I don't claim to be Jewish. My mom's stepfather from the time she was 5 and up was a Jewish man from a Jewish family, obviously. And so we had a lot of Jews in our circle of our sphere of influence. Well, you could say my family, my mom, my brother, my sister, and me were the 4 goy in a family of Jews. All the rest were Jewish. Hey, Barbie D, good to see you. I just saw you pop into the chat room. And so my take on Israel has always been one, even if you take out the theological stance that I had in believing they were God's chosen people and this land was theirs, that there was prophecy that seemed to indicate that when Israel once again became a nation, that there would be a generation would pass and the end times would start, the eschatological calendar, the prophetic calendar, and all of that. I even had a youth pastor, I mentioned this the other day. He said back in the 70s, he was speaking to us kids, and he said, the youth group, and he said, it all looks like the end times could come on us today. The rapture will come, the great tribulation, the millennial kingdom, all these things that are prophesied about. And he said, but God could always reshuffle the deck, he said, and it'll all change. So we don't know. And from a theological standpoint, we really don't know. Because remember, in New Testament times, the apostles, these are the guys that were the disciples of Jesus. After Jesus died, resurrected, ascended to heaven, they went out into their ministries, spreading the gospel. They all wrote and believed that the end times and the second coming of Christ was going to happen in their lifetimes. Remember, I talked about how Nero, people thought Nero, the emperor, by the end of the 1st century AD, they were thinking that Nero was the Antichrist. And they believed the end times were upon them. So, I remember Hal Lindsey's books, Matthew. Saw all of those when I was a kid, 7th and 8th grade, the early 1970s, the late great Planet Earth, and so on. That was written before you were born. Yeah, I was a teenager in the early 70s when I first saw those books. But all of that to say is that Israel always had a special place. I have always wanted to see Israel. I've not been to Israel. I've been to Egypt, but I haven't been to Israel. I wanted to see the places where things took place in the biblical writ, the historical accounts. And if you take out the theological aspect of that, I'd still want to see those places because they're still fantastic stories, and I still have always supported Israel. David and Goliath, would I want to see the Valley of Elah where that took place? That valley still exists. It's always been known as Elah, the Valley of Elah. They've even found the encampment of the Philistine army from 3,000 years ago. That would have been on the other side of that valley. So the archaeology says this was the place. I'd love to go walk in that little valley. It's a little valley with a little streamlet that runs through the flat bottom, where it said David picked up the smooth stones. And so it would still be very interesting and intriguing to me, but might have a little different take because of the theology. All of that to say, there's a theology that based my support of Israel. Now, I look at Israel historically, even if you took the theology out, I still see them as a people that was, by the time World War II came and post-World War II, and they finally reestablished the state of Israel in 1948. Never again. Remember the Holocaust? Never again. There is still a lot of grief and sadness, and I don't even have the right words to describe it. The history of the Holocaust. The loss of life. Some 6 million Jews. And people will try to diminish the importance of that and say, well, the Romani were too, and homosexuals. Yeah, There were a lot of undesirables to the Third Reich that they killed in the Holocaust, but it was basically a final solution against the Jews, even though other people were killed too. And all of that, once you learn of the establishment of the State of Israel, whether you believe God exists or not, they have a right to exist. And they said this was our ancestral homeland. We're going to rebuild it. And they, of course, the people rebuilding it, they weren't necessarily Semitic peoples, all of them, the dark-skinned, olive-skinned Semitic peoples that were direct descendants of people from 2,000 years ago. They were European Jewry, European, and they had the bloodlines, but they were as European, Polish, Czech, German, all of them came, the diaspora, the dispersed tribes of Israel came back and started settling in the land. They remembered who they were. And what happened almost immediately is the Arab population in Palestine wanted to do away with the Jews because the Jews represented somebody that was taking the land that they lived on. Well, it kind of comes down to, we didn't do anything. Think of kids in the sandbox. I didn't do anything with that corner of the sandbox, but now that you're here, you're claiming it because you're making it into a beautiful sandcastle. Well, I'm going to try to kick your sandcastle down because you can't have it, because just because I didn't do anything with it doesn't mean you can come in and do something with it. It seems to be that's almost the psychology behind it. And so the Palestinians are saying, no, this is our land. We want a homeland too. Well, Israel said, you can share the homeland with us, and it was divided that way. That's a oversimplification of it. Israel was never against the Arabs sharing the land with them, becoming part of Israel. So, and you can say it could go all the way back to Jacob and Esau, the two sons of Isaac, who fought over the birthright, and Esau was the father of the Arabs and Jacob the father of the Jews, or the Hebrews. You could say it goes all the way back to that. Is that just etiology, a myth story to give substance to the rise of something that people understood historically for a long time? So you've got the Arabs have been at constant odds with the Israelites, the Israelis, and have constantly, from the start, tried to wipe them out. Then they allied themselves finally with groups like Hezbollah up in Lebanon, other groups like this. Hamas in 2007 was when that started, which are all really groups that are awful lot like ISIS, if you remember ISIS from a few years ago, or al-Qaeda. These are all terrorist groups that believe they have a right to commit terroristic acts against those who do not believe what they believe, because Allah tells them it's okay. Sometimes I believe they don't really believe that. They're as secular as the rest of us, the rest of the world, it seems, and that's an excuse. But then I believe there are also those who genuinely believe this. What's not true, Sarah? Which part is not true? Something I said, or something Matthew said, or something about terroristic states? Is it Hezbollah is not a terroristic group? Hamas is not terroristic? I'm not sure. Go ahead and type your response in there, and we'll talk about it too in the after hour. So what you've got are these groups that do not want Israel to remain a state. As a matter of fact, Hamas in its own charter, as I've mentioned before, states that part of their charter is the, quote, annihilation of all Jews in Israel and around the world. It's in their own words. So these states exist. The Palestinians want to have a state of their own. Sure. But they voted in, it was more a coup, I think, Hamas. And Hamas is not representing all the people of Palestine, but they're stuck with them right now. I don't think everybody in Palestine wants the death of Israel. I think they want their own homeland too, a dual state. So, having said all of that, the question I asked for tonight's show is Israel and Hamas the same? Are they the same? Are they made up of the same thing? Has Israel committed an apartheid against the Palestinians? I believe, and the more I research this, I was researching for tonight, and everything I read, every sentence and paragraph had something that would lead you into another sentence or paragraph over here and over here and over here, all these tributaries. Oh, saying that Allah says it's okay to kill people, Hamas values are not Islamic values. I'm saying, I hope I didn't misstate that, Sarah. I said, Hamas tells you that Allah says it's okay to kill in his name. Not saying all of Islam believes that. But this is what Hamas uses to do and justify what they do. Right now, Hamas is hoping that they will be able to pull in Hezbollah, that they'll be able to pull in Lebanon and Egypt and Jordan and all these other countries into the conflict to move on Israel. I think part of the West is to try to negotiate with those countries to say, keep your nose out of it. Let Israel and Hamas settle this once and for all. And while Lebanon is lobbing some missiles into Israel, they haven't committed to a full-fledged war against Israel. But they're coming to the aid of Hamas, not the Palestinians. They're coming to the aid of Hamas. I think Israel has a right to take out Hamas. I used maybe it's not a perfect analogy, but I said, imagine if in your neighborhood you have your family living here and somebody kept attacking your children or members of your family from the other side of the fence. And you go over there and you say, knock this shit off. I'm going to warn you, do not mess with my family. Yeah, but we used to own the land that your house sits on now. And somebody's, the bank swindled us out of it, whatever they want to use. Again, it's not a perfect example. But the bank swindled us out of it, and you bought that land from them. That land is ours. I said, no, it's not. I settled here, and I made it into something. It's my land. But instead of living with that or trying to find a way to peaceably negotiate it, your neighbors don't want that peaceful negotiation. They want what they want. And they're willing to kill you to get it. What if in your neighborhood then, after those warnings, members of your family disappear or are killed by that neighbor on the other side of the fence that wants your land back? And you say, that's it. I am taking you out. No, I do not want to have a peaceful solution with you. I do not want to forgive you for killing my children. I want to wipe you out to protect my family in the future. That's basically, as imperfect an illustration as that is what Israel is doing. They have a right to exist. Murder Mitten Mayo Monster says, but was it the people on the other side of the fence? And the weird nothing happened for 6 hours. But was it the people on the other side of the fence? And the weird nothing happened for 6 hours. I'm not quite sure the point you're making there. Maybe restate that so I'll get that. It doesn't matter. If it's like I have said, anybody who kidnaps, rapes women, kidnaps men, kidnaps children, murders people in their beds, murders babies, have never historically been the good guys. You lose your moral standing when you allow that kind of representation for your cause. Your cause becomes immoral. It's like right now, I heard something on the news today. Hamas is saying, we'll let hostages go if you tell Israel to stop bombing us. I said, I hope to God Israel says, fuck off. You let our people go, and then we'll talk about us not bombing you anymore. They don't get to call the shots from that side of the fence. When you have committed atrocity, you don't get to call the shots. Let's see. Murder Mitten says, but it was people on the other side. He says, I'm basically saying Israel stood down for 6 hours. They did nothing during the attack. Are you sure it was not an inside job? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't an inside job. This is the thing I say about, you can apply this corporately and you can apply it individually. There are charges I hear against people. Let's take it down into something dumb. Pop culture, the ghost hunters. This has nothing to do with killing a people or anything like that, but there were all these charges that Jason and Grant were faking things on the show, The Ghost Hunters, to get viewers, faking ghost attacks and things like that. Now, people brought that up to me because I worked for them on the magazine. And what do you think about this? And I'd say, I dismiss it right off the top. Well, I can show you video where it shows that his collar's being pulled. I said, you can show me that video all you want. I said, I don't think that's what was happening. There's a different explanation. Well, how can you take that stance? I said, because I understand the character of the man you're charging with that. I know him personally. He is a friend of mine. That is not something he would do. My friend who was accused of rape. Thank goodness he was exonerated. He was found not guilty. He was exonerated. He was cleared in court. Took 4 years and the loss of his career to get there, but he's recovering from that. And I stood for him in front of a community that nobody knew what really happened, but everybody was on the bandwagon. I said, how can you be on the bandwagon? You don't even know him. Well, you don't know him either. I said, yeah, I've known him for 25 years. I said, this is not in his character to do this. Tell me you don't know somebody in your circle of people that are close friends. If somebody accused you of them raping somebody, you go, pfft. No, that person would not do that. And you know of a certainty that they wouldn't. This is what I see with Israel. I see these charges going out there. Well, they set this up. I do not believe that is within the character of the nation of Israel. Could there be unscrupulous people that would want to do that? Sure. Anywhere. People are people everywhere you go. But Israel stands for, we just want to experience our right to exist. And they've been there for about 80 years, 75 years. And they're still fighting for the right to exist. I do not think a country that stands as our largest democratic country in the Middle East is going to perpetrate an act against its own people to hopefully roll that dice so they can go and destroy those who are doing it. Now, keep in mind, they're not in there now in Gaza to destroy Palestinians. They are in there to wipe out Hamas. There is the difference. Now, Hamas, on the other hand, sent their own people into Israel and killed the first night, killed 200 people in their beds as they slept, a bunch of hippies on a farm, a commune, and murdered their babies in their beds, beheaded them. Same kind of argument came out, Murder Mitten. Well, maybe that's just, how do we know? We haven't seen any of these murdered babies. Well, we have now. There were soldiers there who gave eyewitness reports of all of this. And it has been confirmed that these things took place. Now, if you are the good guys fighting for a righteous cause, why would you go in and murder a bunch of farming community hippies and their babies in their beds at night? Why would you do that? Well, to make a point. Is that how you make a point for wanting freedom? I want freedom and I want my own nation, and I will kill a bunch of unarmed hippie farmers and their babies to make my point. That's not Israel doing that. But Israel will respond to that. Now, I could be wrong. I could be way off. Maybe Israel is a nasty... But see, here's the thing. I think this is the way we have come to be taught in this country, in the West, is to question everything. No, America is not exceptional. America can do no good because America's done evil things. People do evil things. Corporately, we stand for doing what's right. And where we haven't done right, we fess up and we find ways to evolve beyond that and do better. Israel's been fighting since the day they were conceived and voted into statehood to exist. And they've built a fantastic defense system there to do it. So I personally, this is my take, I don't think Israel would engage in that. I really don't. Do I think Israel would do some things by subterfuge? Do I think that they would do things? Oh, did you get timed out? No, I didn't time you out, Murder Mitten. I don't know what happened there. Did I phase out? Sorry about that. No, I was actually talking to you a bit through there. I don't know what was the last thing you heard. Anita Palmer says, listening to a program of young Palestinian girls speaking during an interview, she hated Jews, wanted them all dead. All I thought was, you're too young to spew that kind of hate. So it's learned. We have to teach our children to hate and to kill and to die. And this is what I believe has happened in Palestine. They have been taught to hate, to kill, to die. This is something Professor Bauer was talking about on this show the other night. We'll maybe hit it again. Is the majority of people living in Gaza are younger people that are being groomed by this hate, kill, and die philosophy. And it's like I've said and I've repeated, like Golda Meir said many years ago, the Prime Minister of Israel. She said, the day there will be peace between Israel and its Arab neighbors, she said at the time, is the day that they love their children more than they hate us. Salient point. Murder Mitten says, sorry, my other comment did not come up. I asked so you didn't think this could be as real a version of 9/11. Sorry, Israel voice chat got it wrong. And I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying it's very weird. I agree with you. It seems weird. But when you look at the history of the region, it's really not weird. This has been going on for the last 80 years over there. And before that, the fighting for the land. And keep in mind, Palestine is not a country. It's not a nation. As I've said before, they have no gross national product. What good thing has Palestine done to contribute to the Middle East or to the world? And I only ask that maybe only slightly flippantly, because what I mean by that is, what gross national product have they produced? What do they put out to make themselves stand out and shine? Nothing, it seems, except the hatred for Jews and the wanting the land that the Jews are sitting on. Because that was our land. And Israel said, well, it was ours before it was yours, maybe ancient, but we came in and did something with it. The people living here didn't do a thing with it. It was a sand hole. And they turned it into a garden for the last 150 years. This just feels to me like it's an excuse for America to go to war with Hezbollah. I have no idea if I spell Hezbollah, Hezbala, I think it is, H at the end. I know what you were saying, Hezbollah. I think the United States wants to stay out of a war with Hezbollah. I think the United States, though, Israel is one of our strongest allies and our oldest allies, and they've been an ally, and not as old as England, but we have always supported Israel. They have always been an ally of ours. We will always help them defend their land. And I do see the United States going to try to step in, along with other countries, to try to prevent Lebanon, Hezbollah, from coming in and waging war on Israel at this time. I think Hamas is dying to have Hezbollah come in, to have Egypt come in, to have Jordan come in, to have Iran and Iraq both come in and attack Israel. I think the rest of the world is trying to work those countries to say, no, you don't get involved. You let Israel settle this with Hamas. And then they will settle what they do with Palestine. Sarah said Biden is going to send troops to help with humanitarian aid. I think that they'll turn away from that really quickly. Yeah. I think you're right, Sarah. I do. I'm confused. If Israel is Muslims, I'm so clueless on those countries. There's about 20% of Israel is Islamic, is Muslim. And the other 80% is Jews. And other things mixed in. There's Catholics and Christians in there too. So, but about 20% are Arabic. Let's put it that way. And the land, when Israel was voted by the UN to have statehood, they partitioned the land. They partitioned Jerusalem. Jerusalem was not the capital of Israel. Tel Aviv was, over on the Mediterranean coast. Jerusalem was considered an international city. Several religions represented there. If the Jews had come in, they'd have torn down the Alaska the Dome of the Rock. You know that. If they'd owned that, they'd have torn that down. Maybe reestablished temple worship there. I don't know. But that was part of the agreement for them becoming a state, is the city had to be partitioned, so on, so on. Randall Flagg says, and of course, I'm speaking light. All of these things have so much more detail to them. And I've only got 3 minutes left on the radio station, but we'll talk more about this in the after show, in the captain's cabin. Matthew Sainsbury says it's Persia. Iran is just a recent name. Exactly. Persia. Elvis says, how many times have you been there? I haven't been to Israel. I've been to Egypt several times. I haven't been to Israel or Jordan, which is something I'd like to do. I have friends who've been there. I've got a friend who just came back. She just came back from Israel a few days before this all started. She was visiting friends over in Israel. I haven't even talked to her since this started. I haven't seen any posts from her either. I don't know what state of mind she's in. I don't know how her friends are doing. Hey, Grumpy Stack. So, Viking says, we can never keep peace there. They've been trying for thousands of years. Yeah. Look at all the presidents who have tried to do peace talks. I remember the earliest I remember was Jimmy Carter. There was Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan. What was it, Carter, the Camp David Accords? That was Jimmy Carter. And all the way down through. So Michael's right. Trying to keep peace there or make peace there happen, it has to be on their part. Don't you just want to say to all of them, Israel included, though I don't put a lot of blame on Israel. I see Israel as defending its right to exist. But I just want to say to them all, everybody, shut the fuck up and stop. We from the outside can see all you got to do is get this stuff worked out. Talk about it. Do you think the average Palestinian person wants to see the death of Israel? No, unless they've been taught that. You must wish for the death of Israel. I think they want peace for their families and their children too. Who's pushing to own the land? Is it the Palestinians? Or is it the people representing the Palestinians? The Palestinians just want to live in peace and be happy like the rest of us. Do you think living in America here, if Canada became the much stronger nation, we'd have any problem going, I'll be Canadian, just keep us safe? Oh, Canada. So, and again, that would be as if the United States didn't already have a country here. Palestinians have no country, never did. Folks, we got to get out of here. For the radio audience, we're going to cut out to break. All of you listening on the radio, I want to thank you for being here. We got to get out of here. So all of you live long and prosper. Everyone else sit tight for the Captain's Cabin.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Susie Q. That's right. Welcome to the Captain's Cabin, everyone. This is our post-show for the Intrepid radio program. And, Anita is correct. She said that 6-hour window, or the window of time that Israel left open, was to give the Palestinians opportunity to leave. And that's a big thing on the Egyptian border right now. You go down to the south of Gaza along the Mediterranean, and it borders with Egypt in the north of the Sinai. And Egypt is not letting Gaza refugees come through. So, nope, we are not opening this border. You know why? They don't want that to become their problem. The minute they open that border and allow the Gaza citizens, the Palestinians, to come through, they're going to have to harbor the Palestinians. And then it becomes a problem for them, saying, nope, you got to stay where you are. And so Israel is not targeting them, you noticed. Did Israel go, look at all the refugees going to the south border with Egypt? Are they targeting them with missiles? No, because they're not there to kill the civilian population. They're there to wipe out Hamas once and for all. So it's a big difference there. Big difference. Would Hamas bomb Israelite citizens trying to get out of the country? I don't know. You tell me. Do you think that's something they would do? I know they've already come into Israel and killed innocent people. Why wouldn't they kill innocent people at the border? Pearson says it's sad because they'll willingly take out their people for the cause. They are hell-bent on taking people with them, it seems. Yeah, I think you're right. Well, that's because I don't think Hamas views themselves as being the Palestinian people. Here's Professor Bauer is here. I've been looking forward to you coming in tonight before the last 2 minutes of the show.
Well, there's sometimes you've got to jump in when it's hot.
When the jumping's good.
When the jumping's good. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday. And
yes,
I think one of the first things that is really important for everybody to do is to never take the news that you're hearing as the actual facts.
Right.
They're really I've got a couple of processes I use to manage the tsunami of information that comes in. And one of them is giving everything a 48-hour period. Unless you have, unless it's a kinetic event of significance that, like planes flying,
right.
You want to watch that.
Yeah.
And even some of the events as it relates to, the skirmish that I am referring it to. I think people are using the term war incorrectly. This is not a war.
Not a war.
It's an ongoing conflict that goes back millennia.
Yeah.
The current iteration of this conflict is very recent, though. It's only in the last 100 or so years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other thing. The other way I process information is applying the measurement of metrics. Let me see what the numbers are. Let me understand the information that's coming in, and let me run it through the filters of just the metrics of whatever it is. And it's one of the things that you had mentioned during the show that I keep talking about since we started talking about this, is the odd population in a very small, the characteristics of the population in a very small piece of land. And you look at the metrics around that, the timing, if you have half of this 2 million people, average age of 17, which means there's a whole bunch of them younger, what was going on 17 years ago? And it happens to be the time that Hamas took over from the administrative and political perspective, from the Palestinian Authority, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those numbers just sound strange. At least at a minimum, they sound like they need to be interrogated and try to understand what can come out of those numbers that you can use to help define and use your discernment on what you're getting as far as information. And it throws up some very interesting questions. I mean, if you have half the population that have been essentially indoctrinated by the ideology of the administrative rule of Hamas over this group of people, well, let's take a look and see what that ideology says and what does it mean? What kind of crop of kids could that be creating?
Yeah.
So let's look at the charter of this group of people calling themselves Hamas. Well, apparently they have, from a long time, for at least 20 years or more, they have had the sense and the declaration within their charter to eliminate people that identify as Israelis or Hebrews or Jews. Oh, well, okay, that's not a good thing. Doesn't sound like that's going to be any fun for either side. So how have they corrected or changed that, or have they modified it in some way? No. That is a part of the education that they have provided to this large group of young people.
Yes. By the way, Captain Barbados is hanging in the wings. He would like to add something to the fray here. Let's bring him in. I see you there. How you doing, Matthew?
Good night, Professor. Good night.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
what's
not
on
too
your
bad.
mind, brother?
There was something I wanted to share because I was watching a guy that he does. He's a Messianic Jew. He believes in Jesus, the Messiah, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw where he was talking about in the Bible, where to talk about, when it happened the Great Flood. And it says that God decided to send this flood because mankind had become extremely violent and stuff like that. And he was looking at the linguistics of it and giving us the interpretation. And he had shared that the word violence that appears there in Scripture is the word Hamas. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
What was the word? What did it mean?
Yeah.
Did he
Which
say
means
what
violence.
it meant in biblical text? It meant what?
Yeah. That's what he pointed out. I'll do further research on it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is Hamas translates into violence and vice versa.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I would pick something different if I had the option to run and to call and define what it is that I represent. But you bring up something that's very important as well, is all the linguistics that are going on. That's
linguistics and contexts.
Yeah, context is the words and the way that they're constructed and where they're put together is where the most important information you can find to sort out what the hell is going on, at least for yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Well,
because the type of violence you see happening now, I mean, this is stuff, man, that you will see during the time of the Crusades or during the time of BC era, babies being massacred and all types of crazy stuff. So.
Well, that kind of stuff has been going on for millennia. I mean, you go back to Genghis Khan and Suleiman. I mean, all of these various. In fact, I've got Scotty. I wanted to pull up an image. Let's see here. Let me share my screen and figure out which one it is. Is it this? I think it's this one. So you should see that.
Let's see. Let me bring it in.
Oh,
there it
let
is.
let me share a different one. Hold on. Wrong
Okay.
one. Let me share. Where is it here? Because I think, the context, going back to the point that I was making about the, what the hell is it here? About the region, about the size of the piece of land that all of this is currently going on in. And
By the way, Michael, I see you out there in the wings. We'll get to you in just a second here.
I'm not sure why it's not giving me the one that I want. Oh, window. Let's try. There we go. Okay. All right. There you go. Share that one.
There we are.
Okay.
Much better.
So just historically, going back at least according to this map,
Right.
1200 BC, these were the major kingdoms, cultures
Yes.
that were in that area. You see how Jerusalem's down here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Jerusalem's been down here for
ghetto.
a long time.
Long time.
Damascus, right? Byblos.
Mhm.
This was actually Syrian, or what
Yes.
was considered Syrian, right? And you don't have any Turkey, right? You've got
No.
Assyria,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
a lot of this in here was actually the remnants
Yeah.
of the Persian
Yes.
Empire. Okay. Now, I've got another one here. Let's see. So this is 1,000 years later, basically around 600 BC.
And there's little tiny Israel is tucked way in the lower
Persian
left-hand
Empire.
corner
It's right in
of that purplish arc
Right
there.
there. Yep.
They're way down in the
Mesopotamia.
lower corner. You see
So-
Jerusalem.
Pushing on the wrong one.
Mesopotamia is no more in Iraq.
Right. So do you see anything that says Palestine in there?
Nope.
And there's a number of different maps, again, whoever puts them together, but this is basically accepted archaeological and geological and paleontological history of where
Yes.
these regions were and what they were called at any given time. Let's see if... So now this is extremely interesting. So
There's Israel, the little orange bit
so we
down in the lower left, kind of.
Yeah, so we started at 1200 BC. We went to 600 BC. Now we're going to 1916 AD.
1916, right during the middle of this First World War.
Okay. All this region, this A and B, this is what's known as the Sky-Picot Agreement. And this was done in 1916 between Britain and France. And this is how they carved up the remnants of the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, the Turkish Ottoman Empire.
Okay. So A went to the French and B went to the English. Now, let me zoom back out here. So down here, you see Jerusalem?
Yep.
Yeah.
And this whole region here, this was known as the Levant. There wasn't any... Go ahead. Right now, the conflict is when you zoom out and you look at just the two major players, you have Arabs against Hebrews. Just at the base root. So you have had that conflict in this region.
Hey, by the way,
okay,
what's the little pink there in Israel, just north of Mount Carmel? There's a little pink half circle carved out. What is that?
Let me see if I can get
I can't read it on my map here.
It's Nidan. Let's see. It is
Acre is in there.
Yeah, that's
Acre.
Acre.
That was a Crusader fortress at one time.
And that was a very important port.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
that's World War I. So
yeah, well, this is, people don't realize that, they keep going back to the 48 agreement and all of that, and
no, it's earlier. Yeah.
And using the creation of Israel by the Allies after the end of the war. No. This stuff was going on 30, 40 years earlier.
And you don't see
the British and the English who were doing this, not the Jews and the Arabs. The Arabs and the Jews were the recipients of what was carved out by the powers that be in 1960.
Europeans, right.
Sarah says it's the conflict of Bedouin territories.
Yeah. And who are the Bedouins? Are they
The Arabs.
Semitic? Are they Semitic? Or are they, I've heard another argument about Canaanites. Okay.
Right.
And my historical understanding, which is very limited on them, is that they were basically absorbed into they were kind of a split between where they went with the Bedouins that Sarah's bringing up, the Arab side, and the others went to the Hebrew side. And another thing, just so people understand, Semitic Jews, or Hebrews more accurately, Jews was a term that was given or brought up in the Middle Ages, like in the 1500s. They're actually Hebrews, and there's a whole bunch of people that have switched to Hebrewism or Judaism.
Yes,
Okay?
there was a kingdom. There was a
right.
kingdom north of the kingdom north of the Black Sea called Pazaria. Those people converted to Judaism during the 600s or 700s when there was conflict emerging between Christians and Arabs, and they chose the Jewish faith. You see?
Yes. And so my point in bringing that up is that the actual history of this region is very rich. It's got a lot of genetic and ethnic conflict and conquest. And it's basically between a genetic group of Arabs and a generic group of Hebrews, which are also they're all basically Semitic. Okay.
Semitic.
But there was this split in this that occurred, and then the result was a bunch of these individual groups at different times trying to claim and stake their stuff on a chunk of defined regions.
Yeah.
And they either held on to them and grew, or they lost them and got spread to the wind. And
The Romans.
The
Romans are a big part of it too, because the Romans they changed the land's name to Palestine. That's what they did after the Philistines.
They said this wasteland filled with nomadic tribes will be called from now on Palestine.
Well, and you have the Persians, the Byzantines, the Ottomans. I mean, there was a number of very, very influential and very prominent groups that took over and moved shit and people around the borders all the time. And they lasted for hundreds of years. But in none of the history that is recorded during their conquests and their rule and demise, or before, where there was something called Palestine. Palestine was a regional name that was given through this agreement, this guy Peugeot, to the region. So what that means is that there isn't, it's a name of a place. It's like Mesopotamia. Okay.
Right.
Mesopotamia is a name of a region. Mesoamerica, name of a region. Well, Palestine was the name they gave to that region, which was essentially a chunk of Mesopotamia.
So, question real quick.
Go ahead, Professor.
When I was deployed over there, they kept going back and forth, and I said, from what I understand, that everybody from Abrahamic religions all came from the different tribes. And I thought I was going to start my own mini war because they told me I did not know anything because I was just a dumbass infidel. And I told them, I said, look, I said, I can hold my own. I said, you might think of me as an infidel or a godless heathen or whatever as you want. But, I am a God of war. And they understood that. And that's the only thing that certain groups of people over there understand is escalation of violence. If you hit me once, I'm going to hit you twice. But like I said, that's what I was always taught, that any Abrahamic religion came from the 12 tribes from back then. And but if you bring that up, the reason I bring that up is because I was told by a guy, he's of the Jewish faith. He said, if you look like DNA structure-wise, that you cannot tell the difference between the Israelis and the Palestinians or whatever because they're all genetically very similar. that's well, why do they hate each other? And that was kind of my point when I said that. And like I said, I almost started my own little mini war, which I was fine with that. But
That's like the, I suppose, like the English and the Scots.
but you know, but ain't that where it all started at way back when? If you follow biblical scripture, is how, because everybody has to come from somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up a whole nother can of worms and a rabbit hole that's covering us like Darren Kuyu.
Oh, I didn't mean to make you rub your head, but.
But I'll just follow that little nugget on the table here for just a second. And try to add some context.
Yeah.
So the history that we have of all of these different cultures, civilizations throughout the world and throughout time has been written by those who basically initially who found it and deciphered it, and then deciphered it and started to go, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here. And a perfect example, Scotty, and you and I have talked about this, is Egypt. I can't buy anything that the Egyptologists and all of those folks claim about the story of Egypt. There's nothing over there that was built by the Egyptians. They all repurposed it, in my
Talking
opinion.
about the Abydos lintel again.
Oh, yeah, I was waiting to see if you were going to take the hook.
I always told them that if they could demonstrate today how they built the pyramids all them years ago, that I would believe it. Like I said, maybe I'm a troublemaker everywhere I go, but you know what I'm saying? I have a mechanical mind, and you're going to have to show me how you did it. Just don't show up and say, oh, look how great we are. We built this.
Well, aside from the fact that not only can we not do it with any of the advanced technology that we have today, but there's no written record of it being built in anything. In fact, if you go into the all of the deep stuff that the Egyptologists just ignore as myth, there's several descriptions of finding it and claiming it. Okay, so you,
and they're like, oh no, that's not true. I'm like, well, why not? You know, but if you start bringing up like the Sumerian scheme list or any of that, you will be asked real politely to be quiet and not mention that again, because the host nation don't like it.
Well, and let me answer something that Sarah said, and throw your 2 cents in too, Professor. But she says the contention is attempting to define who is the chosen people, chosen quote unquote.
Right.
It's the divisiveness of the U.S. of us and them mentally. Now, of course, we could go back and say the etiology of this was the story of and I mentioned it earlier, the story of Enoch and Jacob and Enoch. I'm sorry,
Jacob and Esau.
Yeah. And the sons of Isaac, and how Jacob cheated his brother Isaac, the elder, out of his birthright.
Yep.
Because he was the one that was supposed to be blessed, not Jacob. But Jacob dresses up, and I always found it kind of interesting. You must have had a pretty Joe Biden type of doddering old fool in Isaac for his son to put sheepskin on his arms to be able to impersonate his hairy brother. And Dad fell for it. Because his dad goes, I hear the voice of Jacob, but feel the arms of Esau.
The arm is
Esau. Like, come on, dude. But anyway, so Jacob steals the birthright, according to the story. And Esau comes in, finds out he's too late. He sold his birthright for a mess of pottage, a bowl of stew. And so, and there has been conflict between the children of Esau, the Arabs, and the Hebrews ever since. Jacob being the other name for Jacob he was renamed Israel. And so now that is an etiology, an etiological story. Did it really happen? Maybe there's a true story in the base of that a brother cheated a brother out of a birthright. But you can see, is that now that of course was written, that story was written 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago. It's not like we have 3,500 years of reflection on that story. That story is as old as the Bible itself. So if that story existed back then, and they were using that to explain the conflict between the children of Esau and the children of Jacob. How even more so today are they using that story as the etiological story of why there is conflict between the Arabs and the Hebrews or the Jews. And so I wonder about that because, and Sarah made me think of that, talking about the chosen people. God said he chose Abraham and the children of Abraham as his chosen people. Is not Isaac the son of Abraham, and are not Esau and Jacob both the children of Isaac? And so if Abraham is the father of many nations, and his children would be the children, the children of promise, the people of promise, the chosen people, would that not also include Esau and his descendants? So there's the big question, the theological question. And it's like the theology of the Bible sometimes is so overly simplistic that, and I brought this up many times, it reads like mythology. It reads like the mythology of many other ancient cultures. And so can we really go back to that as something reliable? When Israel says they are the chosen people, they believe that theologically. I'm okay with that. They can believe that. If the children of Esau, the Arabic peoples, want to go to war with the Hebrews, the Jews.
But Scotty, how many different cultures have applied that moniker of being chosen to their culture?
Well, never quite in the same way as the Jews did.
Well, we had Hitler just trying to pull the same thing.
God is on our side. Okay. I think every culture has used that.
I mean, you had the whole Aryan race thing. I mean, I think
Germans.
Yeah, you got that. To me, that's just an old story that is a regular, recurring theme and meme in the history of humanity. You go back to the Sumerian, the Enuma Elish, and over there writing. I mean, hell, the Enuma Elish is essentially the 7 tablets of creation, and not only the Old Testament and Genesis word for word, but it's got a whole bunch more detail in it.
Right.
So, and that was 1,500 years before Moses supposedly lived.
Well, see, I still contend that Moses, being raised in the school of the nobles as a child, if you will, of a stepchild of the queen, that he was educated in all the higher learning and education that Egypt had to offer.
Of the Egyptians.
And when he wrote the Pentateuch, when he established the story of creation in the book of Genesis, that's all just the same story you read about in the cuneiform tablets of the Anunnaki.
Exactly. And, you know,
story.
So there seems to be a recurring theme of familial strife and conflict among the kiddies, right? And hell, even
that's what I put it. I was going to call it straight up plagiarism.
Well,
because they have an older text, not the same thing.
You know, if I write a story that's 1,500 years old, am I plagiarizing it? I don't know. I'm expending on it.
But like, speaking of that, I got to get back to it. But I was just going
to Epic of Gilgamesh Hazi flood story too. Same
real
story.
Quick.
Good to see you, Michael.
All right.
Take care, Michael.
Educated.
So, in essence, the conflict in the Middle East right now is basically sibling rivalry. It's still going on.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the stuff.
Not to diminish it in importance, but
right.
But there's a verse in Deuteronomy that does talk about if a man has 2 wives, and if the firstborn comes from the first wife, and you know it states that the firstborn should be treated equally as the next child that is born primogeniture. And it appears to me that there are parts of the Bible where that you do see a type of favoritism towards the second child rather than the first child. You see it first with Ishmael and Isaac, and then you see it with with Esau and Jacob, and then you see it with Joseph and his brothers. So there is a pattern there where you see the children who are born after the first are getting all the blessings and stuff, and showing all the favor than the ones that that precede them. You're seeing quite a lot of that in the text. Yeah.
Well, Matthew, I appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. We're going to get back into
Yeah.
it with the professor here. Thanks for contributing tonight, brother.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Matthew.
All right. Sarah says if they want to find peace, they need to find the common ground in the most simplistic form. They need to agree on satisfying the most basic of needs at this point. Philosophy is a first world issue. I agree. So,
I agree that philosophy, in that context, is definitely a first world issue, but philosophy is made out of the cosmology of the participants. And right now, before you even begin to have any discussion that would be on a philosophical level, you have to have conversation.
right.
And there is no conversation
There's
going on.
none. It is.
There's no desire to have conversation. Now, I think that's primarily more on one side than the other.
Yes.
But I do find it interesting that the Poot has offered to negotiate the peace and get involved in trying to bring this conflict to an end. Interesting play. Not sure if or what anything will happen of it, but at least, where is Sloppy Joe? Okay. Why? I mean, apparently he's going over on Wednesday, but why aren't the puppets that are pulling his strings seizing on the opportunity to negotiate and create some kind of peace and resolution to this conflict? There are our government, from the administrative, executive, legislative branch, which is where all the shit happens, are all they're doing is chirping like a bunch of parrots in a bird cage. They're just saying all this, everybody's picked a team,
right,
and they're yapping away from their perspective. But it's like Sarah says, they got to find some common ground for the most simplistic of needs, and that's got to start with conversation. And right now, the Poot's the only one that said, "Hey, let's have a talk about this, and let me see how I can help."
You see, and you just want to say, you wish you could look them in the eye, all these leaders, and go, can you all shut up and just sit down and let's figure it out? It's because everybody wants what the other one doesn't want them to have, and nobody's willing to give. I tend to side with Israel in that, but Israel is also open to making a way for the Palestinian people to have a place. But it's not going to be owning the land that they've got already.
Well, first of all, remember, there is no such thing as a Palestinian.
That's it.
Other than they are,
right. It's a simplistic way of being able to.
They're an Arab in a certain place of ground that is called Palestine.
Right.
I mean, the whole narrative is around inaccurate and, again, incorrect metrics, because people aren't willing to sit down and talk about them at their core, at what they really are. What's really going on? Well, there are clearly some ideas and philosophies at play that are very one-sided, and they're very detrimental to another group of people. But that's not a good starting place. But that's the first thing that you need to acknowledge before you can have any conversation about doing human needs and simplistic resolution to the most basic stuff. Until you get over, hey, we want you dead. It's like Golda Meir said. You quoted one of her quotes during the show, and the other one was, you cannot communicate with people who want to kill you.
Yeah. There's no negotiating room with people who want you dead.
So they have got to get over that. Now, if the people that the Arab gypsies essentially is what they are, they've been kicked out of all the other Arab countries, so apparently they don't have a good rep, and so their street cred is shot, so they can't go anywhere else. Well, they ended up here. Well, that's because they seem to be, for the most part, a gypsy nomadic Arab group. And I'm sure if they went in and did DNA swabs, they'd probably find people from all over the place out there.
Sure.
But that's the first thing. If those people don't agree with these ideological heads of state that are conducting all the administration of them in their daily life, if they don't agree with them, they need to say something. They need to stand up and say, yeah, we don't like these guys either. Please come and get them out of here. And let's see what we can do.
Sarah, what sentiment are you referring to? Unless you get to the root of where that sentiment originated, says Sarah.
Come on in, Sarah. Jump in here.
Yeah, jump in and talk with us. And while we're waiting on Sarah to come in, what was it that George Abril said here? He says, "Bro, can anyone name all the names of the great skulls of Arabia, or are they even a tribe at all?" George, I got to be honest, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
the great skulls of Arabia.
It sounds familiar. I think that there was some
vaguely, but not enough for me to even speak to it.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is, George. I got to tell you, but you can enlighten us.
You know, and the term he used there, tribe.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably. I'm doing some work.
Something to do with one of the lost tribes of Israel he's talking about, or
no? I think what he's talking about is a different story that had something to do with some of the cultures and the folks that were running the Arabian desert at that time. But tribe is. I'm doing some work on informatica. I'm going to do a show on Thursday just focused on it. And I've been going through trying to just get to the nut of the nugget, make sure that the information, you have to start with information that everybody agrees with, and then you can move forward. And that's one of the reasons that this conflict is just not getting resolved with any kind of dialogue. But
maybe this is what Sarah's getting at, unless you get to the root of where that sentiment originated from. Sarah, you're here. Tell us what you mean.
Evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Yeah, that was basically it. I mean, if you're having somebody who's moved to the point of, I mean, it's like therapy sessions, you know, it's if you get to the root of what the actual problem is in order to address it, you know, you're never going to have resolution, you know.
Very true.
And you have to start with a set of facts that everybody agrees on.
Well, even if you have the same set of facts, everybody's going to have their own perspective on it, their own spin on it.
Well,
you can have one set of data and two people will have two completely different outcomes out of it. And
that's my point, is that the facts have to be, or the information at least, whether they're facts or not, has to be agreed upon by both sides.
Right.
You can't have facts sitting there and one side say just completely deny it, even in its complete empirical state of existence. And you're going, well, this, everybody else over here and everybody else is looking in on this, you know, little conversation and debate, agrees that is what agrees to the definition. We call it this, that's what it is. Everybody agrees. Now, if you're going to come in and say, sorry, I'm not buying that fact for whatever reason, that you can't, it's hard to move forward. You know, the art of the deal, the art of war, the art of persuasion starts with finding common ground. It starts with having even hypnosis. The interaction between two parties has to start with a sense of, I guess you could even call it empathy. You have to be empathetic to what somebody else is thinking, saying, their perspective and their objective reality of the facts that we're all trying to agree on. But as soon as somebody comes in and says, well, that fact it may be a fact, but I'm not going to agree with it. You go, okay, well, you have to keep looking. You got to find something from where you can say, can we agree on this and start from here? So that's not happening because there is a complete unwillingness and defiance of one side to even engage in that. And that has been the history of this region of these people, where however big, in West Bank and Gaza, where all of the different skirmishes, just go back, 70 years and to the end of World War II. What I was showing earlier on the maps was that this goes back long before that stuff happened.
Yeah.
So these people that get worked up, and this is a fact that to me would be one of the ones I'd put on the table and say, now, can we agree on this? Because that is a fact. It's documented. You don't make it up. It's not a subjective perspective. What's that, sir?
I didn't say anything.
No, there was something from the background. I don't know what that was.
So that is, to me, it's the big problem for resolution. But I don't know if it was Friday or Sunday. I think that there is a potential solution to this, that the other Arab nations, at least 2 or 3, will get behind and support and be a part of. And I think one of the main players is going to be Saudi Arabia. Because if you look at before this recent spate of destruction with bombs and gas and God knows what else, that whole Gaza Strip is just a mess. I mean, the folks have been running it for the last 20 years, living on everybody else's money, have done shit with it. I mean, they've come up with nothing for it to function on its own, or at least to have more autonomy on its economy. Gaza doesn't do shit. And the rest of the space, this 4 or 5 mile wide, 25 mile long, is just rubble. I mean, it's old stuff. The whole thing, if you were going to do it right, the agreement would be, okay, the people are going to be taken care of, and they're going to be a part of a completely brand new bulldozing and rebuild of that space. And it's going to be designed by the Saudis. I don't know if anybody's seen Dubai or any of the stuff down there, but these guys, it's not world class. It is the class of the world. There aren't any other cities around the world that are anywhere near as advanced and clean and engineered with just amazing.
I've been to Saudi Arabia, but the thing with Saudi Arabia is you have the two extremes. Even there, you have the extremely rich and the extremely poor.
Right.
So, I mean, in a democratic society, that's not going to work. You always complain about the top 1%.
I'm not talking about I
don't know if that defines democracy, though. By the way,
I'm talking about what they've been able to do, whether it's for the rich or the middle class. They know how to rebuild cities. They know how to build.
They have the oil money.
Yes.
Well, not okay. Wherever the money's coming from.
And I mean,
my point is that they have created a modern society that is a model for the rest of the world on many fronts, from technology to the engineering, the public works. I mean, they had the luxury of starting from scratch using oil money and build one of the most incredible things that we've ever seen as far as a modern city. My point is that they have the skill set and the money to go in there and provide that same capability, that same infrastructure to the people known as they're Ghazians. They're not.
Well, I mean, even so, Saudi Arabia is a kingdom. It's not a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so I mean, they've eliminated most of the political, machinations that we get through. I mean, you may like or not like MBS. I mean, but I mean, that's what you had. They didn't have to vote. They didn't have to quibble. About look at the history of voting history of Netanyahu. I mean, he had to go with the way their politics is structured. He had to go through a couple of cycles of convincing, all the other little parties to get behind him just to get him to become prime minister.
Well, that's just politics. That's just politics. I'm not talking about. It sounds like you think I'm saying that the Saudi government and model is what should be used. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that the resources, the capabilities of what MBS, and by the way, there has been a separation from the royal and the religion going on there. They are much more separated than they have been in the past. And MBS, I think, as well as some of the others, these folks have gotten westernized. Once they figured out how to take all that oil money and turn around and get into tech, get into cryptos, get into deep engineering, creating some of the most incredible buildings ever made. They employed the money into profitable and progressive results, creating this. All I'm saying is that capability, if that was applied to Gaza, Maybe Saudi's an administrative role, not running it. Maybe there's 3 or 4 of the Arab countries, Egypt, Syria, Saudi, even Qatar. You form a council and you say, okay, we're going to put the money in and it's all going to be managed. Have the Israelis in there as well, even maybe the US, maybe Russia. You have a council that says, okay, we're going to reorganize this and we're going to do it collectively together. And we're going to give major, responsibility here and there. But a group, it's kind of like BRICS, the BRICS group of countries and the financial system they've created. Brazil, Russia, China, Colombia, and can't think of the third. South Korea is a part of it, and South Africa. They've all gotten together and said, we're going to create our own currency. We're not going to rely on currency system. So they're doing our SWIFT is the international banking system electronically that all the world's countries and everything goes to the International Bank of International Settlements. All of them use the SWIFT system. Well, these countries got together and said, we're going to create our own. And by the way, we're going to create our own currency so that the petrodollar that we idiots own will have an alternative. That's what's happening with the cryptos and all those things. But I'm getting off track. My point is that the opportunity to clean up
my job.
the opportunity to clean up a century-old skirmish and address the plight of the victims is sitting right in front of everybody.
Yeah.
The
But
problem is the leaders in both not only Hamas but also the folks over in Iran. There's a small group of very radical people that have control over a lot of people, and the people in both instances are not doing well, and they don't like it. There's more education in the Iranian situation, because if you look at shots of video of Tehran back in the 70s, it looks like Philadelphia. I mean, they were westernized big time, and they're a bunch of Arabs, but they have these radical ideologues and theological nuts that have imposed these draconian Middle Ages rules and ideas over the people, and the people don't want it. We are in a connected world where they see.
Why don't the people oust them?
Well,
it's working up that way. I've talked to some friends I've had over there. Oh yeah, I mean it'll be slow, but I mean even with certain, there's even rumors of certain outside countries trying to incite on the inside. I mean those are just rumors, those conspiracy theories that that the outside countries.
I would love to see that happen. I would love to see the theocracy overthrown. I'm not saying do away with your theology. You can have your theology. Don't use it to run your country. Let the people run your country.
Well, that's one of the big problems, is that they don't think, going back to Sarah's comment earlier about the definition of chosen. These folks have chosen themselves to be in charge of and rule the people with their ideology and a theocracy. You see what's happened, again, going back to Saudi Arabia. I mean, they had the whole royal, they got the Sunni and the Shia and all this stuff. And they were a kingdom in even more of the sense than the UK still is, but old school Middle Ages kingdom type stuff. I mean, Lawrence of Arabia, Arabian Nights. I mean, those movies pretty much kind of covered what it seemed like they have been. They were like that for over 1,000 years.
It's the decline of the empire and the rise of the country. But one thing that I definitely wanted to bring up is, you were talking about money and aid. Where is all the money that the U.S. is putting, or all the major countries are funneling into Israel that they have over, 50 years or however long? Where is that money?
Damn good.
It's not in Gaza.
Oh.
They're not using it there. They've done, they've increased their security. Israel's supposed to have one of the most sophisticated security systems in the world, which is why everybody's mind blew up when this happened, because, that was essentially, their version of 9/11. They thought they were safe. And then all this happened. But
Well,
I mean, even with this situation with Hamas, at least, from the Palestinian view, the Palestinians need to give Hamas up if they're hiding amongst the Palestinians, right? I mean, if they want to support their country, if they want to, save their homes,
Well, going back to going back
to do though.
Going back to the metric I mentioned at the beginning, where you have half of this population of they're Gazians. I mean, people are using the term Palestinian because that's what they've been programmed for, but that's not who they are, because there are no Palestinians unless you ascribe them to a piece of land and a region, because that's where the word was.
Well, I mean, they have to have words to say, we're talking about this sort of people, or that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a labeling issue.
So exactly. So my point is that if half of that population, half of 2 million people, so 1 million people are age 17, what's going on there?
What happened 20 years ago to all their elders?
Well, they were born. Apparently, they were, the majority of them, or the average, they were born around 2006, 2007. What happened back then? That's when Hamas took over from the Palestinian Authority. So they were elected, and our own Jimmy Carter went over there and certified that as a free and fair election and said that go forth and rule. So Hamas took over, and, just as I run these numbers through my noggin, I'm going, wait a minute, there's something weird here, because if half of the population was born since then, apparently, the other million were getting jiggy with it for the last since then, or especially right at that time, and popped out half of their population popped out since then. It's like, wow, that's kind of interesting. I wouldn't expect that, but okay. Then you think, okay, well, how were these 17-year-old kids, what were they taught? What was their education? What was their indoctrination like during this time? Because all they had at that, from surmising and speculating, was whatever their leaders, the Hamas, were giving them to be educated, because they weren't getting education from Israel. There were some that were, and isn't there some 20,000 of them that are apparently allowed to cross the border every day and go to work in Israel?
Like that. Yep.
So there was exposure to, some kind of economy and some kind of productive life. But just going back to your question, what are these people thinking? If they're not going to rise up and say, hey, we're with you guys, get rid of these Hamas hacks because they have screwed this place up and we're not happy. Are they capable of coming to that observation and realization? I question it because of the indoctrination that I think has happened since these kids were born. I think you got a bunch of potentially infected minds that are going to need some help. Well, because they've been given an ideology that it's not going to make any kind of movement into some safe and peaceful area.
Speaking of indoctrination and teaching the way things are done, I think and this is very recent and it's a very quick judgment on it, but I believe this is true. When you pay or release $6 billion that have been frozen, something Daniel Andre just mentioned in the chat room, when you release that money in order to exchange it for hostages, what are we teaching the people who took hostages? If you take hostages, you can get $6 billion for it. You can get what you want. You can make your demands in order to get those 5 hostages back. So what is going on and what comes on the heel of that? I don't know if they're related. I'm just seeing the two things happening very close in proximity. Iran being a country that is funding Hamas. Then you see Hamas taking captives. And now Hamas is saying, you give us what we want or we'll kill your hostages. This is exactly what happened with the $6 billion. You give us, unfreeze that $6 billion or you don't get your hostages back. This is something you don't, I think I go all the way back to Ronald Reagan because he's the first guy I heard that said this in a big way in my lifetime was, we don't negotiate for hostages. We do not negotiate with terrorists. And so when I heard again, I'll repeat it today on the news, good grief. I'm just going blank all of a sudden. Hamas, I wanted to say Hezbollah and Hamas at the same time. Hamas made a demand today and said to Israel, you stop bombing us and we'll release hostages. And I said, I hope Netanyahu looks at him and gives him the big fuck off heave ho. Say, you don't set the terms of what we do here. You took hostages. You return the hostages and we'll let you know if we're going to let up on the bombing. We'll let you know what we'll do from there. You are not in a position to demand from us. People say, oh, well, you can't let them kill the hostages. Well, you know what? You can't let them have their way because they took hostages, because you know what they'll do? They'll do it again if you do. So this is what we're learning. This is the paradigm that's being set with Hamas. I mean,
even if you look at the type of, attack and retaliation, they have
Steve, hold on. Steve in the chat room, knock it off. Come on. Everybody's talking. Sarah's been talking too. If you want to be out of here, unless Sarah or anyone else talk and respond, everybody's getting a chance to respond. Maybe if you were here more than 15 minutes ago, you'd have heard us all talking. I don't like that in the chat room, Steve. I love you, brother, but I hate that kind of bullshit from the chat room. Stick around and listen. Everybody's going to get a chance to say something. Even you, what you just said got addressed. So go ahead, Sarah.
The thing I was going to bring up is, even the nature of the attack and counterattack and they're using bombs, which is, that's just, setting off an explosion in the big hole in the ground.
Yeah.
It's indiscriminate. You're hitting women, children, depending on the areas that they're hitting on. The Israeli military is supposed to be one of the most sophisticated militaries out there. Why can't they do it like the U.S. does as a surgical strike, like they did with Bin Laden when he was in Pakistan? Why can't they take out Hamas like that? And because as soon as that attack, I knew they were gonna try and put it on Gaza.
Sure.
They were gonna try to push. I mean, right now all the regular citizens, they're being made refugees.
Israel is not pushing it off on the regular citizen.
No, but I mean, wherever they're bombing, right? I mean, it's not like they're doing surgical strikes into certain areas like we did with al-Qaeda.
Well, it's like we say, who said this in the chat room? It's been brought up many times. What does Hamas do? They launch missiles. They have sites in hospitals, in the back lots of a hospital, in schools, where they surround their sites with children and women and hostages.
And that's terrible.
That's terrible. So what does Israel need to do? What does somebody who is going in to take them out, what do they have to do?
Israel needs to get up with the Palestine people. They need to work together.
The Palestine people don't have anything to do with what Hamas is doing.
Then where is Hamas getting this power?
They've taken the power.
Well, they got elected by a certified fair and free election by our old president, Jimmy Carter.
And then where is it saying the bylaws? When's the next election? It was just was it a one and done?
I haven't heard anything about a next election.
I haven't heard anything about that, but that would certainly be interesting information to go get. But the bottom line is that Hamas has ruled these people. They have had the administrative authority and the police,
sheer
military.
physical will. by being fueled by Iran or whoever, that
Well,
supports
they've
a
been
similar type of ideology. There's people saying that Iran is supporting Hamas.
yes,
They
they
are.
And
are.
then the whole thing kicked off because Israel was butting up to Saudi Arabia, which was definitely more moderate than Iran currently is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
because,
was considered by a lot of people a good thing.
Are you
get-
familiar with the Abraham Accords, Sarah?
a little bit. I mean, my
So the
brain right
Abraham
now.
Accords they were put in place under Trump by Jared Kushner, and it was an agreement between Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, and I think Qatar was in there. And it was a regional way to create peace and economic cooperation among all of the Arabs and the Hebrews. And so that has been moving along quite nicely until this little event. There's people speculating that it was getting so close to being done that Hamas and Iran, with Iran's help possibly, said, yeah, let's throw a little monkey wrench in that. So the talks have been suspended. They have not been canceled. They were suspended by MBS, but the entire Abraham Accords is a transformation of all of that conflict and those maps that I was showing earlier. So there's more at foot than just who's dropping bombs where and who's getting killed. The collateral damage in this is just, that's a part of war. Is it sad? Yes. Does anybody want to see it? No. Is it going to happen? Yes. Can we do anything about it? Well, all we can do is try to support a positive outcome that for all involved. And all I'm trying to do is I look at the metrics of it, like I was saying, guys know me, and I try to see what's at play. And at a minimum, just about everything that's going on in the world today, if you follow the money first, then you start finding all the other critters that are in the cracks and hiding in caves and shit. So is it bad? Yes. I'm trying to think of how can this get resolved? What are the issues that need to be addressed in order for it to get resolved? And that's where I was going back to. Until you can have a conversation, you're not getting started anywhere. And you have to start that conversation with agreed upon facts.
Sarah, what do you think will resolve it?
I mean, it's already proven that, the slaughtering on both sides is not going to resolve it.
Right.
So the main thing that's going to control is how bad are they going to let this humanitarian issue go? Right now, I mean, I think I was watching the news earlier, and they said Biden was supposed to send 5,000 troops to Israel to help with the humanitarian effort, which I think is, bullshit.
Yeah, no, that's bullshit.
They're putting people in place to, to eventually to support Israel and just, level the region because even during the Trump administration, they were trying to put a U.S. embassy in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
How is that any different than what it's like you were talking about earlier about the French and the British came in and they just carved up the region and said, okay, this one's yours, this one's mine. Their cultures are completely different to what was in the region. Some people may or may not acknowledge that.
Well, see, it's like Trump saying they're going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which is something Israel would love. But Trump had no power to make Jerusalem the capital of Israel. He just said, we'll go along with you and we'll recognize Jerusalem as the capital
which
of
means
Israel.
they'll give them
wait. We moved our embassy
and the financial support to get it done.
We moved our embassy to Jerusalem. We did that official.
We didn't have power to dictate.
It was a symbolic gesture of support and recognition.
It's not symbolic. It's tactical because that embassy is considered U.S. soil, and both sides back and forth. But in synagogues and mosques, they're bombing each other, killing each other, causing massacres. That's going to spill over. And then once the U.S. involved, then that's
synagogues bombing mosques? I thought mosques were being used to harbor Hamas bombing Israel, but Israel doesn't use synagogues to bomb Hamas.
No.
I'm talking about the opposition. Hamas will
Okay.
bomb synagogues.
Yes.
Right? I mean, not
They
that
will.
would be stupid if Israel,
Right.
bombed their own synagogues. But I mean, there's violence going on both sides. I mean, any major, Jewish or Islamic holiday or day of remembrance. I mean, if you look at read the local papers in both of those areas, some people may say, "Oh, it's propaganda," but that's what they're putting out. That 15 people were killed in a drive-by shooting in front of a mosque, or 500 people were killed when somebody had a suicide bomber go off in a marketplace that in the newer parts of the city or old city. So I mean, violence is obviously not the answer, but I mean, with everything so escalated right now, I mean, basically, everybody needs therapy.
Yes.
Try to get the therapy. And right now, people are in, that red zone state. They are so angry. They can't see anything. It's like, when you're angry, you get stupid.
Yes. That's the
So,
truth.
yeah. So when you get angry, you get stupid. So, and right now, everybody is in their stupid state. So, and as far as trying to calm everybody down and try to come back to sensibility, I mean, there's
Well,
not much going on. I mean, the Hamas is willing to talk to Qatar, but I mean, and that's about it. They have no other forms of communication.
see, we're
You
treating
really don't
Hamas
think
in
that they had a significant Iranian influence there?
No, I think Iran's involved. I do.
I think that they've been involved for a long time.
start.
Well, I mean, just look at the sophisticated of the weapons. They have drones. They have, all the fancy gun stuff. I mean, I'm not a gun enthusiast, so I can't tell you. I can't tell you an Uzi from whatever. But I mean, this is just the level and the sophisticated, and then the reason they're even able to breach, Israel, Jerusalem, the wall itself. They were, people for, the FBI and CIA and people who follow, that sort of stuff. They're going to be studying that for years. How was it done? Was there an insider? Was there spies? Was there just, taking a truck and pushing it through a weak wall, and entering through? But I mean, every aspect of this event is going to be, broken down to the minutiae for the next 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
It's the same thing we did with 9/11.
And the conflict will still be going on. Sad to say.
And one of the things that, Sarah, I find ironically interesting is that when you look at the capabilities, the assets and the resources of the opponents, you essentially have a David versus Goliath kind of scenario. Because, I mean, the military, the Israeli military, their technology, the Mossad, their intelligence is world class. I mean, other intelligence agencies and special forces and all that get trained by them and even use their technology.
Yeah.
There's nothing that Hamas or any of these folks in the Gaza Strip have anywhere close to that. And the support they've been getting, apparently, you asked earlier, where's all the money going that's gone in there? Well, there's been over, I think it's averaged 3 or 4 billion a year that they get for 2 million people. And their infrastructure is shit. I really want to know what they've put into and produced for education. And the rest of the economy is crap. You've got 50% unemployment or something like that there. And that's before all of this shit happened. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions when you follow the money and you look at the results and you go, well, if Gaza and Hamas was a business, they would have gone out of business a long time ago. they would have collapsed and been tossed out in the free market, because they just, their performance with the ROI, return on investment, from everybody else, not their own. They don't generate anything. They have totally screwed the pooch. They are
It's basically like
business case
patronage
class of how not to do it.
It's a patronage type of system. You know, they rely on foreign money to sustain themselves. They're not making anything. It's like what Scotty said earlier. They're not making anything.
No.
So, and then, you know,
and then you wonder what they've done with the money they've got, because apparently they haven't done anything.
Right. I mean, where is it going?
I think all they're really doing, and I don't mean this to sound so, whatever you want to call it, I think all they're doing with that money is finding new and creative ways to destroy Israel. Once they've achieved that goal, they're going to think that they have what they want, if they ever achieve it. Hopefully they never will. What are they going to do without Israel to attack? They'll start attacking each other.
Well, but the main problem is that even, you know, it is Hamas. It's a small minority voice that very loud. It's the small minority voice. It's very loud.
Mm-hmm.
They're a very noisy group of folks.
They're like trans people in America.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that's really important when trying to sort out what's going on and what you can make of it. The narrative has been so carefully crafted and curated that they have consciously gone after not only the words and the way that they sound, even to the point of adulterating the original meaning. And they have weaponized words and images to get at the emotions of the people that they're trying to convince to their side. And there's nothing more emotionally and intense, just intensely visceral than seeing what happens during war, and seeing all of the broken stuff and the blown up buildings and bodies and boats and everything else. And that was done in, you know, throughout the first two world wars. But now we have real-time smartphone video access. You don't have to wait for CNN or whoever to show up and do it officially with their cameras on their channel.
Real to real.
You're getting the real stuff now. And that just adds to the tsunami of shit that you got to sort through and turn your bullshit meter on and make sure it's calibrated, and you've got to parry your way through it. You got to go, well, that one looks maybe real, maybe not. That doesn't sound like anything I've known about. This resonates. This makes sense. And you've got to filter through all this shit so you can make sense out of it and not lose your mind, because the key, like I was saying, and that's my main point, they've weaponized words and language and ideas and images and sounds to eviscerate the most intense emotional experience of those that consume it. Well, that just, you get emotional about shit and you don't stop and think and put your emotions to one side and just look at the information. Doesn't mean you get rid of them. You just get them out of the way of the main filter. You're looking at something. Because all of this stuff doesn't look nice at all. It's not happy at all. It's not anything really anybody wants. But it's that small few that you mentioned, Sarah. It's a small little group of extremely noisy and irritating people who have, for whatever reason, gotten into the captain's chair and are pulling the levers, pushing on the pedals. And they are the ones that are creating what we're seeing and the conflict. Not only what's going on there, but among the people that are observing it. We're on the other side of the planet. And same thing with, I was thinking about this with Ukraine, for example. You notice how you haven't heard anything about Ukraine since it started?
Nope.
Interesting.
I just heard Putin is going and visiting China. That was about it.
Yeah. Well, he's offered to facilitate peace talks for this conflict. Just the last couple of days. So,
yeah,
I mean, but my point is that Zelensky and the folks up there. And I think that region, that space called Ukraine, has been a filter for corruption and chaos for a long time, and it's been used by a whole bunch of different people. And I got to say that I would give Zelensky an A+ for creating the biggest GoFundMe in history.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
Because all he's doing is going around and collecting everybody else's money. And that's kind of what Hamas has been doing with their little fiefdom that they've
in the Arabic countries. Yeah.
They haven't managed well at all. So it's interesting how there's all of a sudden there's conflicts to cause the concentration and attention focus in certain directions. And that when you look at all of those big blips on your radar screen, and then you start tracking some of the shit that's just going on and around and behind it and through it, it's a different picture. I think we are going through these conflicts to end a bunch of stuff that's been around for too long.
I think you're right.
And has been profitable in its nefarious activities and intent. But all of that is about to get cleaned out. So one of the ways that I personally deal with all the chaos and the crap going on is I look at it and go, well, it ain't ugly, it ain't pretty, or it's ugly and it ain't pretty, and it's definitely bad, but it feels like this has to happen in order for the next phase to begin. So going back to, as an analogy, what I was saying about just cleaning out this Gaza Strip region and letting people with money and talent and skills and resources and experience go in there and rebuild it and do it as a collective effort by all the different parties involved. I think there's a chance for some serious awesomeness on the other side of the carnage we're experiencing.
I think you're right. And we're going to leave it at that for tonight. I am 19 minutes over time, but thank goodness we don't have another show back.
That was all Sarah's fault. That wasn't mine.
Yeah, Sarah.
Okay.
I'm
But I
you
just
came
want to
on.
add one more thing. It's
Sure.
whoever manages to calm down this issue, that's what the world's going to look like. This is a world leader,
Mhm.
That'll be the Antichrist.
possibly. For a while.
That's
Now
a
we
whole
have
nother.
peace
It's a
and
whole nother
safety.
show.
Now we have peace and safety. Yeah, that'll give us a whole new show.
But we can see how far the depravity that human beings can do to each other. How long is this humanitarian crisis is going to be going on? And I'm guessing for weeks.
Yeah.
Until
months even, yeah. It's not going to end quickly.
until people are already dying, but there's no water, there's no food, there's no aid, medicine,
And Hamas is to blame for that, not Israel.
Yeah, it sucks being in that situation, and
Yep.
how blessed and lucky we are to be outside observers and trying to navigate any way that we can possibly be a positive influence on it. But at the end of the day, this is just another episode in the shit show of humanity.
Truth.
That people say history repeats itself. It's like, no, it doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes with itself.
It continues to flow.
There are metaphorical and analogical things going on here and there, but there's always some other little twist in what's going on. And this happens to be this at least this decade, maybe this century's shit show, because I really think once this is over, stuff on the other side is going to be amazing. It's going to blow people's minds, and we're going to go, God, what were we doing back then? How did we allow that to happen? Look at what we figured out and what we got now. And I'm staying on.
And then we found the Federation and have our starships.
and where all these new buildings are being on the land that they're built on. You'll be kicking out people who have it's been in people's family for 500 or 1,000 years just to build this new city. I mean,
well, I think there has to be, rational discussion and decisions on that. But
Sure.
for the most part, everything, if there is something that's really awesome, it's like 800 years old and it's in good enough condition, my vote would be keep that, build around it. But the majority of it, I think, is going to end up getting bulldozed and replaced. I mean, and it's the same thing that has to happen here in the States. We've got the infrastructure that is just terrible. And in some cases, it would make sense just to wipe it out and just rebuild it because we can. We now have the technologies and the architecture and infrastructure to rebuild stuff in a much better way. Every time I see our power lines and I go down a road, I go, why in the hell did they put them up there? They made a road. They've got a sewer system. Why didn't they just put it underground and so that you don't have this eyesore? And then they come along with windmills, and that's a whole nother story. I'm going to end there.
All right. I was going to say, and we're going to end on that, the windmill thing. All right, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Sarah, thank you for coming in. Need more of you. Guys. So look forward to talking again. Have a good night.
Thanks, Sarah.
Professor, thanks for being here, brother.
My pleasure.
As always, we'll do this again, hopefully Wednesday.
There's plenty to flap the yap about, so I'm ready to jump in and flap it.
Let's do it. All right, Professor.
All right, my friend, thanks.
Have a good night. All right, everybody else, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time, for being part of all of this. This show's for you. It's I enjoy doing it, but it's so you can come and enjoy it too. So thanks for being here. We'll see you on Wednesday. Live long and prosper.